If you could take a moment and go to thegrowingbanddirector.com to give at least $5 or $3 a month, and it helps the content continue to be created for you to help our profession grow. Let's go back to our scheduled episode. Excelsior Music Publishing is proud to sponsor the Growing Band Director podcast. The new concert band and jazz ensemble music releases from Excelsior Music Publishing are here now and available from wherever you get your band music, featuring works of all levels from an incredible composer roster. Listen, browse, and get inspired at excelsiormusic.com. That's EXCELCIA music.com. Do you spend valuable time all year correcting students' hand position instead of focusing on the music? Thumb Gummy solves this. These simple, cost-effective teaching aids fit on trumpets and trombones to guide the right hand into proper position, reducing tension, improving form, and giving tactile feedback so students can focus on playing, not adjusting. It's easy to use, comfortable, and designed by teachers and players, not just for your beginners, but for older students as well. Join thousands of students and bands already seeing the difference. And keep an eye out for our new clarinet thumb rest coming soon. Visit thumbgummy.com to learn more. That's thumbgummy.com. Tuner Caddy is proud to sponsor the Growing Band Director podcast. The Tuner Caddy was created by Mark Casperson, a band director with over 38 years of experience. Like most of us, he was tired of dropped tuners, wasted time, and students fumbling with their gear. So he did what any passionate teacher would do. He invented a solution. Mark designed the original Tuner Caddy after testing 57 different versions. The classic model fits right onto most music stands, holds any tuner, and even has a pencil holder. Then he added the Student Pro, a slimmer, binder-friendly with magnets, so it sticks right to the wire stands. And now there's even the TCT60M, a full tuner and metronome combo that's transposable and includes a 6-foot mic. Super practical and more affordable than most other options out there. The best part is that these tools don't just help kids stay organized, they actually improve how we teach intonation and tone. Tuner Caddy is being used by some of the top programs in the country, from Texas to Virginia, and it's even been on stage at the Midwest Clinic and Music for All Festival. You can find Tuner Caddy at tunercaddy.com, at local retailers, or through Music and Arts, Sweetwater, and Premier Music Teaching Aids. They even offer support for educators writing grants. Check them out at tunercaddy.com. Welcome back to the Growing Band Director podcast. This is episode number 274. I'm here with Steve Nendza, principal at G. Kirkstra Elementary School in Oak Forest, Illinois. Steve, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
I feel honored to have a principal on here. You're the first principal in 274 episodes, but you're a principal, but also longtime band director as well. So looking forward to our conversation to kind of bridge the administrator band director gap. As we get started, just a little bit about you. If you can sort of share your past history for people.
Sure. Kyle, I appreciate, man, being on the show and bouncing off, kind of jumping back in the band director land and coming now, admin world. So this is my third year as principal at the elementary school. We're a grade 1 through 5 building with about 400 amazing kids and about 60 staff members. Prior to moving to the principal role, I was an assistant principal and athletic director in Lamont in District 113A. And I lived that through the entire time of COVID. So that was a quite unique kind of move that was my first, move into admin land. And, we was going strong, and then March hit, and then the world shut down. So we really had to pivot. And I was fortunate to have a great principal I worked with, Joe Sweeney, who was the principal there and still is, and an assistant principal, Shirley Kleehammer, who were just outstanding to work with. And it was just a great way to get my feet wet into admin land. Before that, I spent 10 years in a town called Oak Forest, Illinois, and I was at Jack Hilly Middle School. When I started the program there, we had about 60 kids in the band program. That was grades 5 through 8. And by the time I finished there 10 years later, we had about 300 kids in the program. And we went from a small program that, had a lot of room for growth to a program where we played the state conference for jazz band and concert band, and went to the Midwest Clinic as a demonstration group. And I just had an amazing team to work with, and we just had fun doing it. And at that time, we had about half the kids in band and choir. So there was a thing to do in the building. It was awesome. And then I started. Yep.
So, I assume it wasn't just here's a school, now we're just going to grow because we're going to grow. So as you look back at that time, kind of a follow-up question to that, what are some of the reasons you were able to kind of explode and quintuple your numbers like that?
I think it just was, I had this burning passion when I left Lake Forest. I'm like, I'm now on my own doing this. I want to see a program grow. When I got hired, one of my colleagues was like, hey, it's a gold mine waiting to happen. And it was. I had an amazing principal, Dr. Courtney Arzell, was so supportive in what we did and wanted. And we really focused a lot on fundamentals of playing. And that was a big portion of what we did from the beginning level all the way up through eighth grade. Like it was all about fundamentals. Like, can you play your instrument? If you can't play your instrument, we're not going to sound great as a band. And then it was lots of offerings for kids. We had a jazz band, actually, it came into two jazz bands, woodwind ensemble, percussion ensemble, and the kids were just hungry for it. They just wanted
Mhm.
to do it, and we just kept offering more and more. And it was a thing that more success we had. The parents were into it. They'd do anything that we needed.
I
And
love
just,
that.
yeah.
Love that. Okay, so just a couple questions I jotted down here real quick. As you're listening back, thinking back to your time as a middle school band director, especially, a favorite piece that you love to do.
Favorite piece? Great question. Yankee Doodle Fantasy by Mark Williams.
Mm, great.
It was like one of those pieces that I always wanted to do with the kids because it was just so far out there and it just had so many teaching concepts that you could just embed into it. And I just loved working
Yeah.
with the kids.
What grade level is that?
Probably grade three, three and a half.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And your main instrument?
I was a saxophone player.
Yes. No
Yep.
one's perfect, but we'll try.
And I played
Um,
tenor, so and it's
yeah.
just one of those things.
A piece of pedagogy around the saxophone. You say you're a saxophone player. Like, what's something that like you wish every band director kind of knew about saxophone?
I think it's important that the mouthpiece pitch,
Mhm.
like can you produce the right sound in those mouthpieces, whether it's sax, clarinet, is it right? And if that's working, then all of a sudden, then everything else kind of fixes itself, and your tone problems, are less of an issue.
I love that. And then last sort of impromptu question: what was something you were really good at as a band director?
Something I was really good at, um, pacing in class.
Mm,
Like it was something that class never had down moments. And when we did have down moments, they were so little that everyone's engaged. Like even if you weren't playing, I may stop the band or stop the section and be like, hey, what did we just work on? What's the purpose of that? Or are you fingering along? Are you hissing along? Are you doing something that you're keeping your brain engaged, especially middle school kids? Like you got to keep them on their toes. Um, I think other thing too is I stopped being on the podium. I
mhm.
just moved the room the entire rehearsal. Um, let's be honest, they don't really always watch. So like, let's just take advantage of that and just, I'm walking the room. I'm like, hey, I'm watching hands, I'm watching feet, I'm watching eyes and ears to see if they're doing their job.
And then when you are on the podium, they end up watching more. I know that for experience as well. Um,
Right.
so I know we were going to talk about that you've trained a lot of teachers in classroom management as well. So is your time sort of as a band director feeling like you're good at classroom management that sort of helped you in the realm? So like what are the corollaries between okay, we know what it's like to manage a classroom and band versus like another class?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. That's I think always are, generally when teachers come into the profession, that first couple of years it's tough. You have all this great information of how to teach, whatever your specialty is, and then now you're like, I've got to get 25 or 28 children or less, depending what it is, go in the same direction. It's interesting too, as I think about it, a lot of it is just experience.
Mm,
I remember going to conducting workshops when I was, first starting out and watching these veteran teachers, and they get on the podium and all of a sudden they could just put everybody going in the same direction. And you're the young person, you're like, I just down, left, right, up. What's going on? But I think a big of it is just that, being clear what your expectations are and what you want and what you expect out of your students. And they'll rise to it and being consistent.
mm. Isn't it funny? Like the more you teach, you realize it's kind of not about the content. It's about how you deliver. Like I could
Mhm.
go in and be a history teacher. I'm sure I'm not trained as a history teacher, but I'm trained as a teacher, right? That
Right.
that that art
Yeah.
of teaching is really the big part of it.
Yeah. How can you communicate with that group of kids in front of you why this is important, why we need to learn it, and what we have to gain from this time we have together on it?
Yeah, it's almost like that. Like the longer you teach, the better you're at reading people,
Hmm.
right? If you can read these kids, and then you can go, okay, they can handle more of this, or we got to move on, or whatever that is.
Yeah, I need to back off because this just is not working today, or we'll hit it again tomorrow. We'll try it again.
So is there a corollary between you leading like a band of students, right? And then also now you're leading a faculty of 60 people or whatever it is. I know humans are humans, but now they're obviously big humans.
Yeah, what's interesting is, leading at the middle school level for as an AP and now principal at the elementary school, it's interesting how we are, whatever grade we teach, is that kind of becomes how we are. Like middle school teachers, have a certain persona, high
Hmm.
school teachers have a certain persona, elementary teachers. And I think it's just because the kids we work with and how we have to spin it to that information we're sharing with them so it gets to them. What you to help a first grader in the hallway who's kind of being a little off is different than when you be a high school kid. I think it's important. We just how do we phrase it? How do we spin it so a kid can get that idea?
And so is your relationship kind of with like the elementary program, music program, I should say, like a little different because you were a band director? Like, is there a,
It's interesting because I'm actually in the same district that where I did band at.
Mhm.
So, it's just kind of neat to see what they're doing, the direction they're taking it, and I try to let them do what they're doing. I'm kind of, I don't want to be in their lane. I have my own lane here to, a building of 400 kids that I have to worry about. So
Yeah.
that's my focus is, how do we help our kids here in an elementary setting and our staff as well?
What about a message to other principals or to band directors who can tell this to their principals about like the scheduling of elementary music? About, we know that music at the elementary level is very important, and I know some principals understand that more than others. So maybe a message to principals about that.
Yeah, I think you see that where you have high performing schools, you've got outstanding arts programs. It's what sometimes what gets kids to school. Like, I was the kid honestly in school that like if it wasn't for my art teacher, I don't know how much I would have probably wanted to go to school, but I loved it. And we have to just keep that in the back of our mind. I think we have to keep it in the mind that like it needs to have a
Mm.
dedicated time. I'm fortunate in the district I'm at that it's always had a dedicated time.
Mm.
Elementary, we have our music class is 30 minutes twice a week for half the year, and the other half of the year, then they have art at that time. So, and then I know our middle school is on a schedule where they have it during the day. Right now, it's currently that's how it is. But I think it's important as admin, we go like, we got to they have to have time, a dedicated time for it to happen.
I also want to thank you because we're both meeting after school on a Friday in May. So the principal brain, I'm sure, is much like the teacher brain.
It is like, and we had PD today on a
Yeah.
new assessment platform we've started using. But I'm just, it's important that we, I'm a big advocate of the arts. Like in our building, like the kids come to school, I've always got some tunes playing. We have our music productions that go on every year, and we celebrate that.
And there isn't any band in your school, right?
No, we're grades 1 through 5, and actually
Yeah.
interesting. When right before I moved on to admin, I shifted the program where it was a sixth grade now to a sixth grade startup.
Hmm.
Kind of using that model I saw like the Texas bands are using, where you get band every day as a sixth grader.
Sure.
And because I was finding that kids who started with me in sixth grade and had it every day, their achievement level was no different than the kids who started in the fifth grade program.
Right. We actually have some places around where I'm at too who actually started in fourth grade. And
Yeah. Interesting. My mom was a middle school band director for many, many years, and she started in fourth grade, and she loved it. Like she'll
mm,
tell us, she goes, I love starting in fourth grade. And for me, I was like, let's do sixth grade. I can see them every day. I can make sure there's not any gaps and holes, and I can just help them out more.
I love that. Um, so sort of what made you want to go into the administrator side of things as a band director?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like there's so much of admin life is similar to band director life. You've got 6,000 things moving at one time. And for me, I was ready to like, how can I help to a staff out? How can I help students out in a bigger picture? Like, as a band director, I saw 50% of the kids.
Hmm.
But as a principal, now I get to know every kid. And I'd say probably I know almost every kid's name in the building, or I have some kind of connection with them. And I just felt like I wanted to like get more kids. And every morning I walk down the hallway and I'm like, all right, we got lots of learning to do. Let's go fist bumps and get you excited about school. Almost kind of like when I was a band director. Like I'm excited about that you're in the band. I'm excited about you're here at my school. Let's go.
So for people who are listening who might want to get into admin as well, do you have any advice for them?
Yeah, I would say make sure that you're a master teacher. Make
Love
sure
that.
that you can really teach at a high level. Because you're going to walk into a building like for myself, I was never an elementary school teacher. I, was a middle school person, but I can teach. I can break concepts down. And I think also too, you've got to be willing to do anything. Like if sometimes I'll sub, I'll be a second grade teacher for the day. I'll be a PE teacher for the day. Because I still feel it's important to get in the trenches and remember what it's like, when a kid has a meltdown in the middle of the day or a kid is like needs extra enrichment. Like here, buddy, here's some extra harder problems we can work on. I think the other two things about if you're moving to admin, know that it's a lot different. One of the things that a colleague of mine told me once, he says, when you're the band director, mostly everybody loves you. And when you go to admin, it's not always the same game.
Amen. What's it like when you're observing? Are you responsible for observing teachers, right?
Yes.
So when you're, I could observe a band director, and I know I could probably observe other teachers as well. But how was that like starting to observe classroom teachers when you weren't technically one yourself, right?
Right. Yeah. I think it's interesting. I mean, I always find it easier for me to observe my music teachers because I lived that lane for so long. But I think when it's you're watching, a second grade teacher, it's like how much engagement's going on? How's the questioning? Like, is it high level questioning? Are kids excited about it? How much feedback is being given? So, I mean, it's a lot of what in in the band director world, what you see, but now it's just in an elementary classroom.
I'd like to kind of go back to the classroom management side of
Yeah,
things as well.
sure.
The correlations between band and classroom, like whatever. Um, so as you've kind of trained a lot of people, what are some of the common like issues that you see that you kind of have to help people through?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things you see is when you start the year off, not really setting those expectations. And when the teachers do, things move really smoothly. And when it's not, it's a game of catch up. And you're always trying to reel it in. It's almost I think the band were like when you have a kid who starts off learning an instrument and they got bad hand position, now you're always refixing that and they get that in their brains. I think the other thing too is that teacher voice. I think you see those, as the band director role, if you don't have that teacher voice on the podium, it's the same thing when you're a classroom teacher. If you're not being able to like say, this is what we're doing right now, the kids take advantage of
Mm.
that.
Yeah, my principal says at some point in the year it's hard to put the toothpaste basket back in the tube, right?
It is, yeah. I remember one year as a band director, I wanted the music stands at the end of class to be all a certain way. And the one year I didn't like teach that for some reason, I don't know why. And I spent the entire year chasing it. And so finally, the next year I said, well, we're going to spend a day and a half of every day. We're going to practice this procedure. One thing I talk a lot of the teachers here is like our procedures in the hallways, in the classrooms. What does it look like to line up? What does it look like when you got to put your iPad away? What does it look like when you need to get a pencil?
And so much about classroom management is just how much are you entertaining the kids, right? I don't mean entertain in like a not educational way, but like uh, I swear most of the behavior problems are a kid is bored, right? Or the kid is maybe not being engaged the way they could be.
Right. They're just kind of checked out or they know that it could be too like you're so engaged in working with, say, the small group of kids that we forget to check our rearview mirror and like, oh wait, something weird's going on over there. I've got to get ahead of that. Yeah.
All I've ever lived is the band world, right?
Okay.
Like I've got kids in concert band, I got kids in wind ensemble. Like they're kind of all tracked about the same level, about the same grade. It's like to
Hmm.
me, there's a difficulty in teaching band. Of course, it's super hard, but within that, like the kids want to be there. You have material, they love music. Like there's all these things that are helpful. I've always admired the classroom teacher who's like, this kid's got to be here. You got 20 something, like whatever, how many kids you have. And you might have some super smart, motivated with highly supportive parents, and you might have some that are not motivated, don't have supportive parents. And that like, how do you reach all those kids at the same time?
I will tell people the work that first and second grade teachers do with kids to set them up for the rest of elementary school is amazing. Like the things they work out of kids, the behaviors they shape out is truly amazing. And then they hit third grade, and now we're getting that reading component going on. And then, fourth and fifth grade, we kind of just build on that. I wish every teacher in the world would come and watch a first and second grade class to see how it goes. I mean, I didn't know what it was like till I got into this lane and I was like, whoa, like you said, you've got kids at all different spectrums of learning.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got to motivate those kids and find things that excite them about school. And but it's also, I think, kind of goes back to relationship. How do you build those relationship with kids to get them to want to be in your class and be excited to learn every day, even on those
So,
days when we don't want to?
so is there like excuse me, is there like an elementary thing that I've seen an elementary teacher do that could be then like used in the band classroom? Like maybe something that they've done in their classroom. You're like, hey, this would work great in band.
Yeah, it's funny you said my one of my kids' teachers was doing a reading thing, and she was talking about reading with kids. And you know how you'll tell kids to like point and follow along while they read? Well, she would actually do is she would have like her finger above and then the kid's finger below. as they read. Well, I actually do that with my kids in the band world. I'd like pair them up on rhythm pages, like, all right, one's pointing up, one pointing down, and you guys are helping each other to get through that rhythm line.
I love that.
Yeah. And it was so eye-opening to see like, oh, whoa, little Johnny here cannot track across the page. He's like done with the whole line and we're on measure one. So I see that a lot here in the elementary lane of what,
Yeah.
that helps teachers track what they're doing.
One thing I stole from an elementary classroom, a music classroom, was like if the teacher is singing a song to them, like to teach them a song, to have
Mhm.
this, the students are padding along with them, keeping the beat in a quiet way, but to be engaged in that music. And I've often found that when I have a flute section working on something, I always say pat with me, and the rest of the band knows they have to keep the beat as the flutes are playing it.
Mhm.
That's one of those things that like you can take from another level, of teacher and use in your classroom.
Yeah, I mean, how can you get them engaged when they're not like, actually like playing their horn at that point? That's a great, yeah, always a good way to see that.
And when they're checked out, because when they pat and they're rushing, it's like, okay, let's stop. That's not acceptable.
Yeah, I think it also comes at like that standard. Like if we hold them that level of that's what we want them to do, they'll reach it. Whether it's, a first grade class of we're going to make sure that our sentences have periods, or we're in a fifth grade class and we're doing our long division. How does that look?
How much of the curriculum as an elementary school principal are you sort of in with? Like, are you in charge of it? Are you sort of like just aware of it? Like how?
So big curricular decisions come from upper level admin.
Mhm.
This year we just piloted a new ELA curriculum. So our teachers were different teachers in the district, sorry, in our building were they tried it out, see what system they like better. I go to the meetings on it, and then I'll talk with teachers on like, hey, what do you like about this? What's working well? What's not? And that's an area that for me as a principal, not living in the elementary teacher land, I really have to work hard at to understand it. And, I'm in classes just sitting next to kids, looking at what they're doing and how they're doing it, so I can know that like, hey, this is what we're doing and why we're doing it.
An elementary teacher who has great classroom management.
I think as an elementary school teacher, like I'm thinking my team here, gosh, I have so many that are great. If I'm thinking like one of my third grade teachers, Amy DeBoer, she has this just amazing presence with kids, and she's able to reel them in. She knows how to give them the room to have fun, but also like, let's get back to work. And if you're going to be silly, I'm gonna get you back on focus. It's always going to be respectful, but it's a like we heard that a phrase we've used this year in our building a lot. It's called the warm demander.
Mm.
Like, I'm going to demand a lot out of you, but I'm still love you. I'm still gonna care about you. I'm going to still show you a lot of respect in what I'm doing. And her kids perform.
On the band side of things, I've heard somebody that you're very strict on the podium, but off the podium you're extremely, whatever word I'm looking for. Personal.
I look at my fifth grade team of teachers, and I think everybody's in that kind of like pendulum of like classroom manager. Like you start off really where you're not so confident at
Mhm.
it, you get those tools, or as we've talked about, like in teachers, like you get your butt kicked one year
Yep.
because you just have a really tough class. And that next year you go like, okay, now I know what I need to prevent things from happening and I can be on top of things. And I think a lot of it too is um, communicating with parents when kids are not like stepping up. And I'm very fortunate in our building. We have amazing families. Like we can call home and be like, hey, Joey's not doing this or little Stevie's not doing this. Can you help us out with this? And I think it's a big part of it too that I think sometimes we forget, and we can rely more on parents of like, hey, can you help me out with this? But I think too, it comes from if kids are excited about school and you're in a successful music program, a successful school, then parents are going to be like, they're going to back it more.
Yeah. And you always know, like, oh, like going into a year, like, oh, this class is going to be a really challenging class. Maybe it's a ton of boys, or maybe it's a ton of boys at a certain age, or that,
Mhm.
that are kind of problems with each other, or like my son's one of those, like, let's not be with this kid because you guys are both great, but it's hard. So like and you probably have some go-to teachers that you're like, okay, well, this teacher can handle that kind of dynamic better than others. Like, so what is it about those teachers that can help deal with those kids?
I think as they build relationships, I think they know when to push and they know when to back off. Some kids they need a heavy thumb, and some kids they need a heavy hug. Um, And I think too, but the flip side of that is when if you, in the admin world, if we keep giving always those super, super really challenging kids the same teacher over and over every year, like it's a path to burnout.
Yeah.
In the band world, you don't have an option. You may have, little Mary who you've had since the fifth grade, and you're a K-12 band director, and you and her have to figure it out. But I try to be careful with that, and when we assign classes.
I also think of the boys a lot because, like, okay, on a Saturday, what are the kids going to be doing tomorrow? They're going to be outside playing all
Hmm.
day long, running ragged. And then Monday, we're going to say, okay, sit down for 7 hours.
Blocks. Yep.
Like, and I know like we are kind of limited in a lot of ways. So, do you have any creative ideas about like ways that teachers get kids to have movement breaks and, you know,
Yeah, I was watching a first grade teacher during a lesson, and she could tell that they were getting squirrely. It was the afternoon, and so she started asking like, "Okay, if your answer is this, go to the red squares. If your answer is this, go to the blue squares." And we talk about something like purposeful movement breaks. And
we
I don't
have
think she didn't plan it in her lesson, but she could just kind of tell like, "Oh, they need to move. They need to get up. They need to stretch." I think it's important, and there's nothing wrong with hey, we're going to do a stand and read right now.
and in the day of like in these days of school safety, right? Obviously, school safety is the most important thing, but like not being able to just be outside when you want, you know what I mean? Like allowing them to move more while keeping them safe is also hard. One thing I love is some teachers they know the kids who like, okay, go down and do 10 push-ups. And like this not a punishment, but you're like just
Right.
you're getting some energy out in this small area.
Yeah, we have a little guy who he'll carry a box of books down and up the hall just to kind of get his energy out. And he's a great kid. He has a lot of energy. I know teachers will do is they'll have here's an envelope. You need to go deliver this to Mrs. So and so's classroom. And it's I had a student like that one time, and literally one time I had him go back and forth the office like 7 times in a row. I'm like, oh, I forgot I need more staples. Can you go ask Miss So and so for that? Came back like, oh, I need more blue whiteboard markers. So you just got to be strategic,
Yeah. It's hard, because like you don't want things to get out of hand, but they need to be stimulated and moved, especially the boys.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, especially boys. They need it.
Is there a book like I think of The Art of Teaching, like not a book called The Art of Teaching, but like the whole teaching art form that we have. If people are looking for a read.
Yes, let me grab it. I got one on my desk. Hold on.
Yeah.
There's two, and I'll tell you that I was on a path to burnout in my first job.
Hmm.
My students and I were like this all the time. It was kind of like it was my way or the highway, and they just weren't buying it. And I happened to be at Navy Pier, and they have a bookstore in there, and it's the book. So How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and Listen So Kids Will Talk. And it's by Adele Faber and Elaine Maslish. And it gave me just so many like little tips and tricks to teach. And it was just it changed my teaching because it put it in the realm of like I have to change what I'm doing if I want them to get better.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be 12 and 13-year-olds like they are, but if I don't change my vocabulary, I don't change how I spin things, that these kids are never going to move forward, and we're going to be like fighting this entire time.
We'll put the links in the show notes so people can just click and check it out if
Yeah.
they want to as well. And what was the other book?
And there's actually one more too. It's called The Courage to Teach, and that's by Parker Palmer. And it just really talks about that heart it takes to be a teacher and how heavy it is at times, but how that it can really push you through.
I love that.
And there's one more, and I wish I would have learned it a lot earlier in my career. And I'm gonna Google it right now because I never get the title right. So
I'll throw one out while you're looking it up. If somebody asked me that question, the book is called Wooden, and it's written by John Wooden, and it has nothing to do with quote unquote. Well, okay, it has a lot to do with teaching. It's all about teaching basketball, right? But like working with
right,
humans.
yeah.
And as an academic teacher, like I hate reading, honestly. Like I got to read the right book or I just will fall asleep. And this was like the easiest read ever. Yeah. So Wooden, I'll put in the links as well.
I'll have to get that when I get off here. I'll jump on Amazon, get it. And the band directing book wise, that I didn't get to, like, I don't know, probably I was like 13 or 14 years in. It's called On Teaching Band by Eddie Green.
Hmm.
And it was just lots of great nuts and bolts of how to get your kids to play better.
We all need that.
Yeah, and it was like super, nothing was rocket science, but it was just like, oh yeah, if I try that with the embouchure, that'll fix that problem. And then all of a sudden, wow, they're more in tune. And it's like, well, this works great.
So if anybody listening is wondering how a principal in Illinois and a band director in Maine got to meet, we have Brent Berger to thank. So Brent sort of hooked us up together, and I kind of want to go with what he mentioned recently. But so, what's your relationship with Brent, and how, like, why would he have mentioned you in this?
Yeah, so I met Brent way when I first started teaching when I was in Lake Forest. I was part of the Illinois Music Education Association, and I was one of the division rep, or sorry, the one of the local reps for the middle school. And then we got to know each other through that, and then Vandercook College of Music through some classes.
Hmm.
At one point, he invited me up to go guest conduct at his school, and we've kind of just kept in touch over the years via Facebook, and always appreciate what he does, and he's a great educator. And I always love he on the band, one of the middle school band director groups online. Someone's always like, oh, "What do I get? What should I have my kids do? The concert's over." And Brent is always like, "Put the horn up to your face and play." And I always love that
They
because
can't talk when they're playing.
yeah, they can't talk and they play. They sign up to be in band to play an instrument. So put the horn in their face and let's rock and roll on it.
So he was talking about basically you helping us with administrator language, right? So
Yep.
we're getting observed by an administrator who odds are was not a band director
Right.
or probably was not in band. If they did do band, probably don't remember much from it. And so some of this, like he mentioned, like the Danielson model and how what we do in band doesn't necessarily fit within that. And so connect some connections. I want to read what he says. The main thing he wants to know about is from you how band directors can use administrative language in quotes to talk to administrators who have no music background about their evaluations. What an admin sees in a math class looks like this, but that's something that looks like this in a band rehearsal. So how can we also educate our administrators about how band works when it comes to checking the boxes when they have to evaluate us?
Yeah, the Danielson. So I think, first is the level of engagement. Like you can talk with your principal, like, hey, look, this is how I'm going to create engagement in my class. And it may look different depending on the level. If you're, say, a middle school, say a first or second year band, like I have to go around each day and I need to make sure I'm spot checking instruments. But like you talked about earlier with the idea that, my flute players are patting the beat on their thing. Well, just because the trumpets aren't playing, they're engaged. And I think it's important for admin to see that and understand that we've actually, as a teacher, we've thought about that. How am I going to keep, you know, my trombone section from not like doing something too weird and, while I'm having to hear the flutes play this, crazy lick that they don't know yet. Um, and I think it's important we talk about that. Or it can be like, hey, here's just, you're going to hear the trumpets do this passage, but everyone has got this melody sheet and they're all doing it so they can all learn and they can have a deeper understanding of the music. Because if you don't know, if you're not familiar with that, you're like, oh, that's why they're doing that. And to me, it's like good if you're having say it's this run the clarinets are doing, well, let's have the rest of the band learn it. And they can become engaged on this and they're going to develop at a higher level. I think another thing too is really as a music teacher, and I got better this towards the end of my career is the kind of questions we ask in class. How are we moving our questions from the, you know, yes or no type answers to like, hey, so how are we comparing these two sections? Or, these two students just play these passages. I need you to compare it right now in class. How are they different? Which one, has things they need to work on? Which one is, you know, has the best tone and why? I think often, I think in the music world, we were for so long, it was you're the director, you're the like it's my way, the highway, and I
Mm-hmm.
tell you everything how it goes. But versus like, where do the kids get to like put some, input of like why we're doing it this way? I mean, as the director, we still someone has to set like this is the style. We're gonna play our quarter notes this long, or this, we're gonna sell this much. But as a teacher to a principal, it's like, hey, this is what we're working on. This are the skills we're trying to develop. I think that's a big part of it too. Like when you're talking to a principal, these are the skills that we're at. We've learned this skill. We know eighth notes, but now we're working to make them all even. Now we're working to make sure that um, that the tone stays steady as we articulate through this passage.
I have so many thoughts. Of just like feverishly writing, right? So you talk about level of engagement. Like not only do you have to keep 60 kids engaged, but you've given them noisemakers
Yes.
and you've told them not to use them, right?
Right.
Um, what kind of questions are we asking in class? So letting the kids be engaged through those questions, and a great way to do that is the dynamics, right? Like
Mhm.
I've never let kids make up dynamics in a lyrical passage and they've never like settled on something that was bad. It's always good. Like do something emotional, do something dynamic. And assuming they're mature enough to handle it, sometimes you do have to say, okay, maybe you're 12, you don't understand this yet. Let's just do a crescendo, right? But as they get to that level, like let's make something up, do something dynamically. And that's a great way to kind of give them some input.
Right. And then you go like, hey, that actually works better than I thought it would be. Like, let's go with that. Like, I like how you shaped that phrase. Or like, no, let's try it a different way and let's compare it. I think that's a big part of like talking to our administrators, like, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Hmm.
I always feel like we should be able to, if a principal walked in your classroom, you should be able to justify why you're doing what you're doing at that time.
And then he also, let's see, something to tell a principal, like they're all learning at the same pace. Like, okay, some are faster than others and all that, but like you're playing at the same tempo all together at the same time. You can't be like, all right, everybody just kind of do your thing for 20 minutes and we'll come back. Like that's chaos, right? Um,
Right.
so you have to deal with that. And you're also getting immediate feedback. A lot of times people say, well, how are your students going to know? How do you know if your students are learning? We hear this in like PD, right? And
Hmm.
we sit there and we roll our eyes like, you
It's
can
what we
hear it,
do.
right? I mean, it's instant. And sometimes principals don't understand that. Like, no, what we're hearing is the feedback. And when we respond to them, that is our feedback right away. We're not writing it that night on a paper and giving to them the next day. Like it is happening now.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that I wish the whole world could see music teachers and coaches too, like athletic coaches. Like, you don't wait to the end of basketball practice to go like, oh, Joey, by the way you're dribbling, buddy, is just, we need to fix that. It's that instant feedback. It's that specific feedback. I think too, as band directors, it's something we can talk with our principals like, hey, here's the feedback you're probably gonna have to give the kids. Like, they're going to need some direction on, it's a hand position reminder, or I'm going to tell them we're going to talk about to, observe maybe another section. How are people sitting? I think that, we talk about that specific thing, but sometimes with our administrators, we got to give them things to just look for.
And I remember when I first started hearing the words formative and summative,
Hmm.
and we were in a small group and I did the mistake of actually opening my mouth. Like it's one of those, like, just let it go. And like, so I'm talking with like a bunch of math teachers and English teachers, and they're super sweet. And I said something at one point that said, everything that I do in music is formative and it's also summative. And they look at me like I have nine heads. Like, what are you talking about? I said, well, everything we're playing right now is based on what they're able to play and what we did last. And then what we're going to do next is always based on, like what we're doing this concert is we can do this because of last concert we did this. And then what we do after that is based on what we're doing, right? So it's like just this constant, like there's no end goal,
It's
right?
like it's this loop. It just,
Yeah.
yeah. And you're always building upon whatever you just did last. Yeah.
And I've also had principals ask me, like, okay, tell me what your units are. And when I was a younger teacher, I'd be like, I don't do a tone unit. Like, it's not this week we're doing tone, and next week it's like we have all the rhythm, all the units all the time, right? Finding what works for you. So, what my unit is like, okay, this 6 weeks of this concert schedule, this is the unit, right? This is like what, and then all the things that go through all of them. And there might be things you work on more in this concert than other concerts, but like that's so this class has 6 units and it's basically the concerts or whatever that is. And that seemed to like make more sense in my brain.
Yeah, I think it's important too. Yeah, because it's a good point. You say like you're like tone. Well, we're working on tone from the day you pick up your horn till the day you graduate. Like
Mhm.
but it's just like different levels of like expectation.
Well, and think about it. When you get to the end, you're showing your mastery in whatever. Like it's not a test. It's like, okay, let's come after school in the evening. I want to put you under hot lights. We're going to put you in, we're going to dress you up. We're going to put you late in the day so you're going to be tired. And then let's bring all your parents too. And let's do something they all understand. Like let's just make music and let's do it together now. We're not playing a recording of when we sounded like, and like if you think about it, this is like the most extreme version of a summative is when we do these concerts.
It is, and I was telling my staff one time we had a staff meeting, and the our choir director had a concert coming up like a day or two. I said, "Look, could you imagine taking your 20 kids, put them on a stage, and we're going to do math problems, and everyone can see whether they get it right or get it wrong, and you put your job in the hands of 10-year-olds."
I love that. So as we close, is there any as you look back on your time being a band director, do you have any advice for band directors who are teaching now?
Yeah, advice wise, there's so many things I like go on for an hour, but
Let's do it. Let's do it. Whatever comes to your mind.
I think number one is you got to communicate. You've got to let your principals know what's going on. And here's a word of advice. Like on a Friday afternoon, that's a great time to pop your head in your principal's office and knock on the door and be like, "Hey, Mr. Mrs. Doctor, I just want to tell you what's going on in class," and give them some great information. Like share something good with them. So often in an admin role, we're just hit with stuff, and it's just part of the job. It's the gig.
Problems,
Yeah,
problems.
problems and needs and challenges. And I used to go into my principal's office when I was in Hilly, and I would just pop in, and it wasn't because I was thinking that way. I was thinking like, man, I just want to tell you this cool thing we're doing. And I would say that is a huge thing if you want to help to build up that connection with your principal. And on a Friday afternoon, everyone out of here is as quick as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my principal that I had at Hilly Middle School, was John North, and he told me that one time, and I was like, wow, that's so true. I think now in my role, like I love when a teacher comes to me and says, "This kid, like, just they learned all their fry words. They got all these common words, and I will call home and be like, 'Hey, Mr. and Miss So-and-so, just want to let you know that Joey's with me, and he's just got these all mastered. He's working so hard.'" I think jumping on that advice is calling home for good things.
Mm-hmm.
I know we're busy, but a good phone call goes a long way. Other advice, earplugs in your band room. I wish I would have earlier on, and I never did, and I kind of pay the price a bit for it now. Let's see, other advice wise, bring people in to work with your bands.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was very fortunate to have so many people come in. Brian Covey, he's at Lockport High School, came in one time, and the things he did with the band, I was like, I didn't even think about that. And it was a butt kicking, and he was so kind and caring, but I needed that information. Don't be afraid to bring people out.
You were talking about as a principal, it sometimes can be hard to get professional development. This was off air before we started, and
Yeah,
and you were saying that the main avenue that you kind of can do that a lot of ways is through podcasts.
yeah, podcasts are a great one. Like, whether they're leadership podcasts, whether they're, NPR, just because I need my brain to be a little thinking at a higher level.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. I think other advice as a band director. I think if you're new in your position, really be careful how much you change.
Mm-hmm.
If you walk into a situation where it's a hot mess, then you can pretty much do whatever you need to do. But if you walk in and you're replacing someone who was really good and they were loved by the community, like you got to go a slow roll because that's worked for X number of years. And whether it was all great or not, but you got to establish yourself so people know that like, oh, this person now knows what they're doing. They're going to take us to the next level.
Love that. Steve, thanks so much for all the information. Really
Yeah,
appreciate it.
man, I'm glad we could do it. And thanks for, the opportunity to share what we're doing.
We sincerely appreciate you taking your valuable time and listening to the Growing Band Director podcast. Your students are very lucky to have a band director like you. If you have any suggestions for episode topics or think you have an area of expertise to share on a show with us, please reach out. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to help spread the word, please give us a 5-star review and tell your band director friends to subscribe as well. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, our YouTube channel, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening to The Growing Band Director. See you next week.